Mama, help me.
What? What happened? Weren't you on a field trip?
I don't want to go. I was stunned when my daughter, who had left the house smiling, ready for her field trip, came back home in tears. I couldn't understand why she was home. For a moment, I was completely at a loss. Seeing her in such a state, I spoke to her gently. At the same time, a new question arose in my mind.
How did you get back home?
She was supposed to go to the amusement park by bus with her school. It didn't make sense for her to be back home 2 hours after she left. Choking back tears, she slowly replied, I came back in a car. They told me to get off right in front of the house.
A car!
I couldn't hide my surprise and raised my voice.
Was it someone you know?
It was Dad.
What?
I immediately called my husband, unable to stay calm.
Hello? What's going on?
What do you mean?
Susie's back home.
I don't know anything about that. The call was abruptly ended. Filled with anger, I clenched my fists.
Can you tell me what happened?
Yeah, look inside my backpack. Inside her backpack, I found a mess. The lunch I packed with her favorite foods was scattered everywhere, the lid open. The juice in her water bottle was gone too.
Did Dad do this?
Yes. I left Susie with a friend and headed to my husband's office. I couldn't forgive him for ruining the field trip she had been looking forward to. Bursting into his office, I was ready to fight for my daughter. I'm Mindy, a stay-at-home mom in my 30s. I live with my husband, Tom, who's 3 years younger than me, and our 6-year-old daughter, Susie. But Susie isn't a child born to both of us. She's my daughter from a previous relationship.
Maybe you should think about remarrying?
Yeah.
Still can't forget him?
I lost my first husband in a car accident for years before marrying Tom. My mom, worried about me, suggested I remarry, but I just couldn't think about it positively back then. At that time, I was working as an office temp, doing my best to provide for my daughter. That's when I met Tom.
Aren't you working too much lately? Always staying late at the office.
It's nothing new. I'm fine.
I'm worried about you. Let me help so you can finish up early.
Tom had just joined the company and was always kind to me. Honestly, I was trying not to get involved with men much at that time. But I couldn't push Tom away, probably because he reminded me of my late husband.
You don't have to pay so much attention to me, you know? Eh? Why's that? Why's that?
Because I like you, Mindy.
Huh?
His sudden confession caught me off guard.
But I'm divorced, you know.
That's okay with me.
And I have a child.
There was a brief pause, and I thought I saw Tom's eyebrows twitch.
It's okay.
His words shook me. I was happy, but responding right away seemed too irresponsible.
I can't answer right away.
I understand. I'll wait for as long as it takes. When I got home, I was really torn about what to do. Later, I made a proposal. It was to meet my daughter. If Susie accepted him, I'd consider his confession.
Hi. I'm Tom. I'm Susie. Nice to meet you.
The following weekend, the three of us went out together. To my surprise, Tom and Susie's bond deepened more than I had expected, resembling that of a real father and daughter. Seeing this, I felt reassured and decided to give my answer.
About what you asked before, if I'm okay, then yes, I'd like that. Really? That's great.
And so, we started dating. 6 months later, we got married. I was excited about our new life together, but marriage doesn't always go as planned. Our new life began in a home we rented. Susie seemed happy, which put me at ease. However, that was only in the beginning.
Now that we're married, I want you to be a stay-at-home mom, Tom said. What? Why all of a sudden? I think it's better for Susie. But Susie's starting elementary school this year.
Tom's expression turned irritated.
Besides, working together in the same company is inconvenient, considering what others might think. Maybe, but let's go with that, okay?
His earlier annoyed look disappeared, replaced by a smile. Not wanting to argue just after getting married, I reluctantly agreed to his proposal. And from there, our relationship gradually worsened.
Okay, I'm off to the hair salon. Please take care of Susie.
Sure.
Got it. See you later. Have a good time.
And I left. This was the first time since getting married that Tom and Susie would spend time alone together. I was anxious but thought it would be fine since they seemed to have a good relationship. But when I returned home after about 2 hours, the house was eerily quiet. I'm back. No response from either of them. Feeling something was off, I headed straight to the living room. There, I found Susie lying on the sofa.
Susie!
Huh? Mom?
Oh, good.
I was relieved and collapsed onto the floor. Susie had just been sleeping.
Where's Dad?
I couldn't feel Tom's presence in the house.
He said he was going out and left me alone.
What? I tried calling Tom, but he didn't answer. About an hour later, he returned. I'm back. I rushed to the entrance.
Where were you?
Oh, just went for a walk.
What? Leaving Susie alone?
Don't be so mad. Susie was asleep, and I just needed a break. But I couldn't overlook a certain change in Tom.
That's quite a nice smell for just a walk, isn't it?
I noticed a sweet floral scent, like body soap, coming from Tom. Eh?
Must be your imagination.
Saying this, Tom quickly headed to our bedroom. And when he came out, he had changed his clothes. Probably to get rid of the scent. It was troubling to think the worst so early in our marriage.
Why did you change?
I got sweaty. Anyway, I'm hungry. Since then, I started to harbor doubts about Tom. He began avoiding us, and it pained me to see Susie looking lonely. It seemed Susie felt the same, sometimes showing concern for me despite her young age.
Mom, are you okay? What's wrong? I'm fine. That's good. Were you worried about me? Thank you.
I hugged my daughter gently. In this difficult life, her smile was my only happiness. It was my solace. Then came a night when I felt the most anger I ever had. I woke up suddenly and noticed Tom wasn't beside me. Thirsty, I was about to head to the kitchen. That's when I heard Tom's voice. He seemed to be talking on the phone. Yeah, that's right. I'm tired, you know. I shouldn't have married someone with a kid. I only did because she was pretty for her age. I was shocked by what I heard. I stood frozen in place. Tom had always been distant with Susie, but I never thought it was this bad. His complaints continued. Yeah, that's true. What should I do now? Eh? No, that's going too far. I didn't know what they were talking about, but it couldn't be good. And lately, she's not as close to me. Really gets on my nerves. Maybe I need to show her who's boss. I was surprised at his awful feelings towards Susie, but my anger towards him grew even more. I thought about confronting him but held back. Instead, I decided to record this conversation on my phone. When I got back to the living room door, he was still laughing and mocking us. I won't forgive this. So, I recorded the conversation as evidence. Well, I'm going to bed now. See you. I quickly got into bed. I spent the night awake, unable to sleep. And it wasn't just Tom that was the problem. His mother was a big issue too.
Mindy, aren't you thinking about moving in together soon? I'm sorry, but we don't have any plans for that right now. Has your husband agreed to this? I'll talk to him later. Sigh. I allowed my son to marry a divorced woman with a child. It seems Tom isn't keen on it either. That's because you've been saying things to him. No way! His mother thought I had stolen her precious son. Even Tom seemed a bit fed up with his overprotective mother.
Originally, she had suggested we move in together as a condition for allowing our marriage. But it was my father-in-law who stopped it. That happened when we went to his parents' house to announce our marriage.
You don't have to insist on living with us. That's not the point.
Please be quiet for a bit.
What matters are the feelings of these two. What do you think, Tom? I might consider it eventually, but for now, I want to live with just the three of us as a family.
Then it's settled. Tom says so, it should be fine.
If Tom says so.
Thus, we got married and started our life as a family of three, but now, the hopeful person I was back then is gone. And I never could have imagined what would happen next.
Here, this.
What is it? Susie handed me a field trip notice when she returned from school. A field trip, huh? That's nice.
Yeah. I'm excited.
She looked genuinely happy. And seeing her like that made me happy too. Then Tom came home.
What are you two happily chatting about?
Susie's got a field trip coming up.
Oh? Where to? An amusement park in the next state over.
Ah, that big place. It felt like a pleasant family conversation, which had been rare lately. Susie seemed satisfied, talking and smiling with Tom. But at that time, Tom was thinking of something terrible to do using Susie's field trip. I'll be home late tonight, so don't wait until dinner.
Okay.
Tom, who started coming home late more often, seemed unusually happy when he did return.
Something good happened?
Eh? No, nothing special. But again, there was the scent of body soap coming from him. I wanted to let Susie have her field trip without any issues, so I chose to tolerate it this time. Then, on the evening before Susie's field trip, I'm home. Ah, what a day.
You're late again today.
What? You got a problem with that?
No, not at all.
Oh, by the way, I'll be going into work in the afternoon tomorrow.
Okay. Got it.
At that moment, I didn't think much of his words. Looking back, it was strange, but maybe my interest in Tom had faded. And then the next day.
Huh? Tom, you're leaving already? I thought you were working in the afternoon today.
Yeah, I was, but I have some things to do. So I'll be heading out early. With that, Tom hurriedly left for work. He seemed a bit flustered, but my attention quickly turned to Susie.
Got everything?
Yeah. Then have a good trip.
Bye, I'm off.
Susie left with a beaming smile. She had been looking forward to the field trip ever since the day it was announced. Recently, she seemed a bit down due to my husband's behavior, but I thought this trip would cheer her up. But I was about to realize my mistake. It was about 2 hours after Susie had left. I guess she's probably at the amusement park having fun by now. As I thought this, I heard the sound of the door opening. When I went to the entrance, there was Susie, saying, "Mom, help me."
What? What happened? What about the field trip?
I don't want to go. I realized this was no small matter. The smile I saw in the morning was gone, replaced by large tears. I couldn't understand why she was home, and for a moment, I was completely lost for thoughts. Overwhelmed by her state, I gently spoke to her.
Let's go inside for now.
Okay. I sat her down on the sofa and observed her, but she didn't seem to be injured. At the same time, a new question popped into my mind.
How did you get back home?
She was supposed to go to the amusement park by bus with her school. It's impossible for her to walk back home from there. Sobbing, Susie slowly answered. I came back by car. I was dropped off right in front of the house.
A car!
I raised my voice in surprise.
Was it someone you know?
It was Dad.
What?
I couldn't sit still and called my husband.
Hello? What's going on?
What do you mean?
Susie's back home.
I don't know anything about that. The call was cut off abruptly. I was filled with anger, clenching my fists.
Can you tell me what happened?
Yeah, look inside my backpack. As Susie suggested, I looked inside her backpack and found a mess. Her favorite lunch I packed was scattered everywhere, the lid open. Not only that, but the juice that should have been in her water bottle was also gone.
Did Dad do this?
Yes.
Understood.
I left Susie with a friend and headed to my husband's workplace. On the way, I got a call from the school.
Is this Susie's mom? Actually. Yes, I am. Is this about Susie?
The teacher who called sounded panicked. In my anger towards my husband, I had forgotten that Susie's absence would naturally be a concern.
Do you know anything? She just came back home a while ago. Back home, so that means?
The teacher sounded like she knew something about the situation.
Do you have any idea what might have happened? I heard from other students that a man took her away. I see. Anyway, my daughter is safe now. I'm really sorry for the trouble. I'm glad Susie is safe. There's one more thing I'd like to ask.
After a bit more conversation, I hung up the phone. It was probably my husband, Tom, who the teacher mentioned. And it seems like he did something outrageous. Maybe he acted on what he talked about over the phone before. Disrupting the field trip Susie was so looking forward to. I couldn't forgive him for that. All right, let's go. When I arrived in front of Tom's workplace, I took a deep breath. It had been a while since I'd been here. I knew where Tom's office was. Mindy? Oh. There was a colleague from my temp days. One of the few friends I had back then. What brings you here today?
Just something.
You're here for your husband?
Sort of.
Still a happy couple, huh? I'll leave you to it then. My former colleague didn't know the situation, and it hurt a little. But I couldn't back down now that I had come this far. I burst into Tom's office. Everyone inside looked at me. Including Tom.
Why are you here?
Tom approached me as he noticed me.
What are you doing here?
I came to see you.
This is a workplace. Please leave.
The office was abuzz with our unusual situation. I thought it might not be bad to let everyone know Tom's true nature here. I came to talk about Susie.
That's something we can discuss at home.
No. It has to be here.
What? What nonsense are you talking about?
Everyone here will find out what you did to Susie. Then someone from the back of the office approached. It was my former manager. It's been a while. Hello, it's been a long time.
Manager, please say something to her.
The manager thought for a moment, then spoke slowly. No. I'll take responsibility here. You have an urgent matter, right?
Yes.
I replied confidently. So, why did you do that?
Do what?
Making a mess of Susie's backpack, then bringing her home. People saw it. He grimaced for a moment, then became defiant. Susie wasn't feeling well, so I brought her back. That's all. Then why were you at the amusement park? It's her first field trip to an amusement park in elementary school, right? I was just a little worried.
That's a lie, isn't it? Why would it be?
I just got a call from her teacher. You weren't alone, were you? Everyone in the office seemed even more agitated. There's no proof, right? Tom seemed determined to deny everything. That's when I decided to play the recording I had made previously in front of everyone.
Hey! What are you doing?
I wanted to see if you could still be so composed after hearing this. I played the recording. It was as horrifying as ever. Words like terrible and worst could be heard from the crowd around us. Tom had no escape now. Is this true?
No, this is. I mean, yes. I was discussing a friend's problem. It's not like I planned to do anything to Susie.
I couldn't help but smirk. But the word Susie isn't mentioned in this conversation, is it? Tom realized he had trapped himself. Unable to withstand the cold stares from those around, he suddenly began to apologize, changing his tune.
I was just following orders. It's not my fault, it's my mother's.
Orders?
Yes. It's my mother's fault, not mine.
I was shocked to learn that his mother had been involved in this, but it didn't excuse what Tom had done. As I was thinking about what to do next, my former manager made a suggestion. Just leave work early for today.
Eh?
This isn't a situation to work in, right? Don't come in until everything's resolved. It seemed like a good decision. Then let's go.
Go where?
Just come with me. I forcibly dragged Tom out of the office and headed to his parents' house. During the drive, Tom looked anxious, understanding what was about to happen. We're here. After about an hour's drive, we finally arrived. I dragged a reluctant Tom out of the car and to the front door. Hello. His mother greeted us. It's been a while.
Why?
We have an urgent matter to discuss, I said, heading into the living room. There I found his father reading the newspaper. Hello. It's been a while.
What brings you here so suddenly?
There's something important you need to know.
Okay.
I made Tom sit down next to me and explained everything that happened today.
You guys did all that? Wait a minute. That's just her fantasy.
I played the recording for his father too.
So, what about this? Answer me, Tom. This was a conversation with my mother. Mindy and Susie weren't to my liking, so we thought to teach them a lesson. I just did what my mother told me to. I'm a victim too.
Tom was desperately pleading with his father. But his father continued without batting an eyelid. Even if that's the case, you had the option to say no. By not doing so, you're equally guilty. And after all, you were the one who directly acted. Faced with this undeniable logic, Tom fell silent.
Mom, what have you done? I did it for Tom and this family.
Then the father-in-law, with a fury I had never seen before, bellowed.
How can that be an excuse? What you two have done could leave a lifelong scar of terrible memories.
The mother-in-law, taken aback by his fierce reprimand, couldn't muster a response.
Get out. Eh? I said, leave this house. There won't be a second chance. But if you do that... What?
If Susie had been there, she would have undoubtedly burst into tears. From the intensity of the moment.
Mom, come on. Tom, wait a moment.
Tom was trying to hurriedly pull his mother away, wanting to leave the scene as quickly as possible. But I wasn't going to let them off that easily.
I'm not done talking. What? I got a call from Susie's teacher.
You weren't alone, were you? Someone saw you, right?
You know about that too? I didn't do such a thing.
Then prove it. If you can.
Damn!
Looks like we have no choice but divorce, right?
Divorce.
Tom was clearly not expecting me to say that. He was utterly hopeless.
If that's the case, there's no need for me to hold back.
Like I said before, you'll have to leave this house.
And you're never crossing this threshold again. That's impossible.
I'm sorry, but you'll have to accept it.
It's all because of her. Don't blame me for everything. It's all your own doing.
Eventually, Tom and his mother were disowned and kicked out of the house. She probably never thought it would come to this. They lost everything just because they couldn't stand us. What a pathetic mother and son.
I think this should be enough.
No, this is more than enough.
My only worry is more about your wife than Tom. Leave her to me. She can't do anything now. You just focus on dealing with Tom.
Yes.
If you need anything, call me anytime.
With that, I left my in-laws' house to pick up Susie.
Mom!
Sorry to keep you waiting.
It's okay.
Let's go home. I took Susie and first headed to my parents' house. My mother was surprised but accepted everything after I explained the situation. Then, I went to a lawyer's office to discuss divorcing Tom and his wrongdoings against Susie. I prepared the divorce papers and contacted Tom.
The divorce papers will be arriving soon. Please take care of it. You're serious? Of course. I'm also going to ask for alimony. If you don't like it, prove your innocence. And I'm consulting a lawyer about what you did to Susie. Good luck with that. Hey! Wait.
I quickly ended the call. I was done dealing with a husband like that. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized, and I successfully claimed a substantial amount in alimony. As for his mother,
You've caused us so much trouble. That's entirely your own fault. Maybe you should stop blaming others. Quiet. You and your daughter should go to hell.
I'll return those words right back at you. As expected, she tried to contact me. She was speechless at my response. I barely held back my laughter and hung up, blocking her number. Months passed.
How are things on your end?
Susie and I are doing well. We'll visit you soon.
That's good to hear. I look forward to it.
From what I heard from my father-in-law, Tom and his mother were living together, still fighting over who was to blame. Such a hopeless pair. Well, they got what they deserved.
Now it's just the two of us again. It's okay. As long as I'm with you, Mom. Thank you.
It was just Susie and me again, but it was for the best. Staying with a man like that would have been harmful to her upbringing. From now on, Susie and I will support each other and move forward together. My name is Michelle Johnson. I have a husband who's 2 years older than me and a daughter in elementary school. Both my husband and I work. I was a dedicated designer at a certain apparel company. Then one day, I received a phone call at work.
What? My parents were in an accident.
I was in shock. It turned out that my parents had died in an accident while on vacation. My parents, who were close to each other, used to go on trips about once a month. On that day, it seemed they were driving to a tourist destination, but they apparently fell off a cliff on the way. They were found by a passerby, but it was too late. I was stunned, but I managed to leave work early and decided to call my husband first. Hey.
I need to talk to you about something important. What is it? I'm busy, you know?
My husband sounded irritated over the phone. Even so, I took a deep breath and continued the conversation.
Actually, my dad and mom have passed away. Really? Is that true?
Yes.
They had an accident during their trip. When they were found, it was already too late.
As I talked about my parents, I couldn't help but cry. I was sobbing while on the phone.
Ah, what a hassle. Stop crying, will you? How can you say it's a hassle? My parents are gone. I'm on a business trip right now. Don't call me for such trivial things. Trivial? That's a terrible thing to say. What do you think my parents were to me? Of course, I appreciate what they did for me, but to me, they were practically strangers. Besides, there's no point dwelling on the dead. There might be a funeral coming up, but I can't attend. What? Even though they're family? I told you, as far as I'm concerned, they were strangers. I can't afford to take off work for strangers. So, don't call me anymore.
With that, my husband hung up the call abruptly. I wondered how he could say such cruel things. At that moment, I felt something break inside me. In the beginning, my husband always put me first and seemed to care a lot about me. When he found out I was pregnant, he cried with joy, and during the pregnancy, he was very considerate, almost to the point where I felt embarrassed. Even after our daughter was born, we used to have a good time together, but about a year ago, he started acting distant towards me. He stopped coming home often, and his attitude towards me grew colder. It wasn't that he disliked me, he just seemed to lose interest in me. He used to notice even the slightest changes in me, but now, even if I cut my hair short, he wouldn't care. No matter how much I tried to dress up to catch his attention, he would ridicule me instead.
Come on, at your age, why are you wearing that outfit? You're not young anymore, stop wearing floral skirts. You look shabby.
That's horrible. You used to compliment me.
You've gained weight since we got married, haven't you? I guess having a child really takes away a woman's charm. This is like a fraud.
He would mock my appearance like this. His unkind words hurt me deeply. Our daughter seemed to notice that we weren't getting along. She always seemed worried about me when I was being subjected to his harsh words. One day, as I sat in the living room, deep in thought, my mother-in-law, who was living with us, came over. Actually, we built our own house and started living with my in-laws when our daughter started elementary school. Seeing me cry, my mother-in-law looked displeased.
Hey, what's a grown woman like you crying for? Actually, my dad and mom just died. What? How?
They had an accident on their trip.
Both of them gone at once, they really were inseparable. But hey, you're lucky to get the insurance money for both of them. Let's go out for a nice meal with everyone to celebrate. How can you say that? My parents have died. How can you be so cruel? People die eventually, it just happened sooner for them. Stop crying and get dinner ready, will you? I'm hungry.
My mother-in-law is what you'd call a classic case of a difficult mother-in-law. I had hoped that hearing about my parents' death, she would offer some kind words. But it seemed she didn't have a compassionate bone in her body. So, I started preparing for the funeral with the help of my relatives. My husband, claiming he was too busy with work, didn't even attend. I couldn't believe how heartless he was. After my parents' funeral, I decided to start preparing for a divorce. Once everything was in order, I left a voicemail for my husband, who was still on his business trip.
I'm going on a long business trip. Please, take good care of your parents.
That's all I said in the message. I had no more regrets. I left the house where I had lived for so many years with my belongings. A few hours later, while working at the office, I was called in by HR. My husband, drenched in sweat, had come looking for me. I had been ignoring his calls. He probably thought he'd find me at work. Truthfully, I didn't even want to see his face anymore, but I didn't want to cause a scene at work, so I reluctantly agreed to meet him. When I stepped into the entrance, there he was, looking extremely flustered.
Michelle! What's this all about? Mom and Dad are in a mess. Give me a break. I'm sorry, but you can't just show up like this. I'm working, you know? Besides, weren't you supposed to be on a business trip? I rushed back as soon as I got Dad's call. After you left, they were struggling without you. Mom's in the hospital, Dad's bedridden, and your stuff is gone. What happened?
I decided to explain everything to him, step by step.
Your mother's diabetes got worse, and she had to be hospitalized urgently. You knew she had diabetes, right? I knew, but it wasn't a big deal, was it? She always seemed fine at home. She might have looked fine, but her condition was serious. She collapsed with a severe headache. After some tests, they said she needed to be hospitalized. She wasn't taking her medication or going to her doctor's appointments, so her condition worsened. And why is Dad bedridden? Your father threw out his back trying to take your mother to the hospital. He's always had a weak back. And trying to lift your mother, who's nearly 220 pounds, didn't help. What? Really?
My husband was visibly shocked and speechless for a while. My mother-in-law had been suffering from diabetes for about 2 years. She always loved greasy foods and high-calorie snacks, often snacking whenever she had time. I tried to make low-calorie meals for her, considering her condition, but it seemed more annoying to her than anything else.
What is this? The meatloaf hardly tastes like meat. I added soy pulp to the meatloaf, thinking it would help you feel fuller and be better for your health. This is inedible. I don't want to eat such a poor meal. I'm not eating this food.
With that, my mother-in-law threw the meatloaf I made into the sink. This wasn't the first time she had discarded a meal I prepared. Even seeing her do this, my husband turned a blind eye. Worse, he would sometimes blame me for it.
Can't you stop doing things that upset Mom? Like that meatloaf, you're practically picking a fight. I was thinking of her health. If she keeps eating high-calorie meals, it could be life-threatening. That's none of your business. Let her eat what she wants. And don't you dare do something like this again. I'm the one who has to deal with the fallout.
As for my father-in-law, he never got involved in our arguments. It was more about not wanting to get dragged into it than indifference. I can't believe I put up with my husband and mother-in-law for so long. I had thought about divorce many times. But I hesitated because I didn't want to take my daughter's father away from her. Living without a father isn't always seen positively. But I can't live with this man anymore. I've made up my mind.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to talk to you anymore. Can you please leave? I don't want to cause trouble at work. No! I need answers. Let's talk properly. Fine. Let's go somewhere else.
It was lunchtime. So we decided to go to a nearby cafe. As soon as we sat down, my husband asked,
So, what are you going to do about Mom and Dad? You're gonna quit your job and take care of them, right? What? Why should I, a stranger, take care of them? They're your parents. You deal with it. They're your parents, so you should take care of them. Stranger? They're my mom and dad. Sure, we're not blood related, but we're still family. Well, we're going to be strangers soon, so it's none of my business anymore. Why should I care for your parents after we're divorced? Strangers? What are you talking about?
He seemed to be missing the important point.
Didn't you see the divorce papers I left in the living room? I've already filled in my part. I need you to sign it too. Divorce?
He was so preoccupied with his parents' situation that he hadn't paid much attention to the house. He was so shocked that he stood up abruptly.
Please sit down, you're drawing attention. Michelle, are you serious about this divorce? Dead serious. Do I look like someone who jokes? I thought you were just going on a long business trip. That was a lie. I'm actually transferring to a different department in another state. The move is a bit later, though. What? I didn't hear anything about that. After I told my company that I might get divorced, they offered me a transfer. And I'm not telling you which state I'm going to. What? Are you really serious about getting divorced?
He looked at me in disbelief, not expecting things to have progressed this far without his knowledge.
Divorcing will hurt our daughter. Have you thought about her? Are you in any position to say that? After all the betrayals? What? What are you talking about? I haven't betrayed you. On the contrary, I've been working for you and our family. Don't you have any gratitude for me? Gratitude? When you hardly contributed to our living expenses?
My husband stumbled over his words at that. He had started contributing less to our living expenses about 2 years ago, citing a decrease in his salary. Initially, we split the expenses evenly, but gradually, more of the burden fell on me. There were even times when he didn't contribute a single cent. Fortunately, I worked for a decent company and earned a fairly good salary. Even more than my husband.
You don't contribute to the living expenses, leave all the childcare to me, and at home, there's a mean mother-in-law who picks on me. What benefit do I have staying with you? There's no such thing as benefits or drawbacks in a marriage. We married because we loved each other. Maybe I felt that way back then, but not anymore. You love someone else now, don't you? What are you talking about?
He said this, but his eyes were clearly darting around, betraying his nervousness.
I know about it. You've been having an affair with a young woman at work. It's been going on for about a year now, hasn't it? Her name is Lily, right? A slender woman with long black hair, just your type. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Are you confused or has someone been feeding you lies? No, I hired a private detective to investigate you. I suspected you might be cheating, but I never thought it would be with a woman 10 years younger. And she's married, right? Just got married, and yet, is this okay? You investigated me? Of course. If we're getting divorced, I have to look out for my own interests. With this, I'll get compensation from both of you, which should stabilize my life for a while.
He must have thought his affair was a secret. He was visibly shocked. After deciding to divorce my husband, I hired a private detective to investigate. Since he stopped coming home, his behavior had become suspicious. He started locking his phone, making secretive calls in another room, leaving the house with unusually large bags. I tried not to worry, but he was indeed having an affair. The woman was a temp worker. Apparently, it was she who made advances towards my husband.
She was the one who approached me. She never seemed satisfied with just one man and hit on me at a drinking party. Of course, I rejected her, but she was persistent, and I couldn't resist.
So, you're saying it's not your fault?
Sure, she was seeing other men, but you're also responsible for getting involved. What? She was with other men?
According to the detective, she's been with at least 3 others besides you.
She told me I was the only one.
My husband slammed his fist on the table, showing his irritation. From the detective agency's investigation, I found out that the woman he was having an affair with is married to a high-ranking executive of a major company. She's nearly 2 decades older than my husband, and it seems like she married him for his money. My husband's infidelity is bad enough, but she's no better. In a way, they're 2 of a kind.
But I was just messing around with her. It was just a casual thing, you know. Neither of us intended to ruin our families.
You think messing around excuses everything?
Maybe I can deal with it, but what about our daughter?
What if she gets harassed at school because of your affair?
That's the fault of whoever's spreading rumors. It's the kids who poke their noses into other people's business that are the problem.
You always blame others. You cheated and you haven't even said sorry once. You show no remorse at all.
I'm sorry, okay. I'll break it off with her. Isn't that enough?
It's far from enough. I'm leaving you, and I'll be demanding alimony from both of you. At the mention of alimony, my husband's face turned pale.
If you go after her for alimony, that means you'll have to tell Lily's husband about us, right? Lily just got married, that's so unfair to her.
The one who deserves sympathy is Lily's husband, who got betrayed right after getting married. And for your information, I've already informed Lily's husband about the affair.
What?
You hadn't heard from Lily?
No, she's been off sick from work for a while, and I couldn't get in touch with her.
She must have been too shocked to contact anyone.
Are you serious? What am I going to do if this gets out at work?
You brought this on yourself. And you two were using your paid leave to meet up, weren't you?
How do you know all this?
You've been on business trips a lot lately, so I asked your company about it. They said you weren't on any trips, just using your paid leave. I checked, and Lily was off on the same days. You were meeting up, right?
What?
My husband fell silent, looking down. He must know he's caught. Just then, an unexpected person approached us.
What are you doing here?
Weren't you on paid leave today?
Boss?
It was my husband's boss from the same department. Apparently, the boss often comes to this cafe around lunchtime. My husband looked embarrassed.
You said you needed the day off for family matters, right? Yes, that's right.
His boss, sensing something was off, seemed to have put 2 and 2 together. I decided to fill him in on the situation. He knew I was his wife, as we had met a couple of times before. Actually, this guy's been having an affair with a young woman at work, a temp named Lily Young.
What?
Is that true? His boss shouted, loud enough for others to hear.
Boss, please lower your voice, everyone's looking.
Of course they are. I'd be shocked too if my employee was having an affair. And he used his paid leave to meet up with her. You did that during our busiest time?
I'm sorry. I'm going to break up with her, so can you keep it a secret from the other employees?
What are you saying?
Of course, I'm going to report this. You're in sales, right? Sales is about selling your character as much as the product. No one's going to buy anything from someone who betrays his own family. You might not get fired, but don't think you can stay in your current department. Wait, please. I don't know any other kind of work, and if I'm transferred, my salary. I don't care about your problems. You should be apologizing to your wife. You've hurt her. I know I did something wrong, but this has nothing to do with my job. It does, that's why I'm telling you. I've lost all trust in you. We have plenty of capable employees. I'll find someone else to lead the next project.
It turned out my husband was the leader of an important project. If it succeeded, he was almost guaranteed a promotion. He had been preparing for it for a long time.
That's not fair. You said I was the right person for the job. Not anymore. I've lost all faith in you. I'll report to the higher-ups right away. Excuse me.
After his boss left the cafe, my husband just hung his head. His boss said he was supposed to take a lunch break, but he had to go back to the office right away to report about my husband.
It's over. Everything was going so well. Why did it have to come to this?
His voice trembled, and he looked like he might cry any moment.
I'm going to leave the rest to my lawyer, so let's discuss through him from now on. I left his business card on the living room table, so give him a call if there's anything. You're really serious about divorcing me?
He asked me with tears in his eyes. It seemed too late for such questions. I nodded firmly.
That's what I said. I can't stand living with a cheater anymore. And I've had enough of your mother too. You always turned a blind eye when she was mean to me. I told you several times I wanted to stop living with her, but you wouldn't listen. You never took my side, even though you saw how she treated me. You always said I was overthinking it. I didn't realize you were so troubled about my mom. I'll be more careful from now on. It's too late for that. You'll have your hands full with visiting the hospital and caregiving for your parents. There's no way I can manage that. Hospital bills aren't cheap, and I have to work. How am I supposed to take care of my dad? Maybe you should consider changing your job. It's gonna be awkward at your current company anyway. Don't say it like it's easy. Please, I'm sorry for the affair, come back to me. It's impossible. I've already arranged for a transfer at work, and our daughter is preparing to transfer schools too. I don't want to get divorced.
Then, in the cafe, he started crying loudly. He looked like a child who couldn't get the toy he wanted. I was so embarrassed that I decided to leave him there and walk out. He continued to cry even after I left. And it seems some young people in the cafe found it amusing and recorded it, uploading it to social media with a blurred face. Although the video was quickly removed, it seems his colleagues saw it. We officially divorced through our lawyers. I demanded a lump sum in alimony from both my ex-husband and his mistress. I also arranged for my ex to pay child support for our daughter, with my lawyer making sure he keeps up with the payments. His mistress ended up divorcing her husband too. My ex-husband was also sued for alimony by her ex-husband. Both my ex and his mistress found it hard to stay at their jobs and left, seemingly running away. They dated for a while, but she left him because she didn't want to take care of his parents. She's still young, so she probably ran off to some other guy. Now, my ex has to take care of his father at home, so he's not working full-time, just getting by with part-time jobs. As for me, I'm focusing on my work in my new department. I've been given important tasks and even got a small raise. My daughter had to transfer schools, but she's made friends quickly and seems happy. I've become a single mother, but I have no regrets. I'm sure my parents are watching over me. I want to live strongly, watching over my beloved daughter's growth. I'm going to remarry this woman, my ex-husband declared just 3 days after our divorce. He brought his new partner to my parents' house, where he ambushed me to make this announcement. It seemed he wanted to see my frustrated reaction. Beaming with pride, he said, "As you can see, she's incredibly beautiful. She's kind, gentle, and comes from a prestigious family. Her father is a CEO. She's the perfect wife." I couldn't care less about my ex-husband's new partner, but I was curious about the woman who would come all the way to my parents' house. When I glanced at her, she slightly lifted her hat, and our eyes met. I recognized her face, and for a moment I was stunned, but then I burst into laughter. I'm Aileen Standish, a 40-year-old working in IT. My husband, Tyler, was also my age. We had known each other since high school. Back then, Tyler was the life of the party, always involved in school or sports events. He was popular with everyone, and even captained the soccer team. I, on the other hand, was introverted, preferring books over social events, the complete opposite of Tyler. Despite our differences, we ended up attending the same university and even in the same faculty. Tyler was full of questions. "You're Aileen, right? Do you live nearby? What's your major? Made any friends?" I'd never had a male friend, so I was overwhelmed and initially kept quiet. Even so, my husband didn't stop talking to me, so gradually I opened up and we became close. Tyler always had a naive side to him. Like the time he thought he was scouted by an entertainment agency, but it turned out to be a suspicious venture asking for a $10,000 membership fee according to my research. Sometimes he almost fell for an easy-to-understand scam. I couldn't leave him alone, and while I was trying to take care of him, he told me, "I can't live without you," who is a reliable person. I started to think that there was no such thing, and we decided to start dating. When we started dating, I knew that he was cute, even though he was more motivated than anyone else, but he was kind of lazy. He had a certain charm, despite his cluelessness. Our relationship flourished, and we eventually married after graduating and finding jobs at different companies. We were happy. My husband also worked diligently and helped with the housework, and we got along well. At the height of such happiness, there was new good news. I became pregnant. I was hoping that my husband would become a little more manly and reliable because of my pregnancy, but he often said, "Dinner? I'm sick today, so maybe get something from the supermarket today?" Again? "I'll wait until you feel better, so go ahead and make me some food," he said, giving no indication that he cared about me as a pregnant woman. What's more, when my belly started to grow little by little, he often made comments like, "You've really gained weight. You look like a wrestler." I was often irritated with my husband, but for the sake of my unborn child, I was careful not to accumulate stress by going home to take a breather. After a long pregnancy, I safely gave birth to a baby girl. I named the baby Hannah. There were many things I didn't understand and difficulties raising my child for the first time, but I was very happy spending time with my daughter and husband. A year has passed since my daughter was born, and my maternity leave has ended, so I returned to work. I was originally working full-time, but balancing childcare and work was harder than I expected, both physically and mentally. In the end, I consulted with my husband and coworkers and decided to switch to part-time. When I started working shorter hours, my husband's sloppy personality escalated further. "Hey, have you cleaned the bathroom? Just do the cleaning yourself," he said. "Your working hours are short, so you should have some free time." While I was preparing dinner, my daughter suddenly started crying. "Hey, I can't keep my hands off it, so please take care of Hannah and change her diaper." When I said that, he retorted, "I can't do it. I'll never be able to change a diaper. It'll hurt my nose, too." The days were tough, but to be honest, I had gotten used to the situation, and before I knew it, 8 years had passed. Now that my daughter is 8 years old, I don't have much to do with her anymore, so I was planning to put even more effort into my work from now on, but suddenly my husband said, "I'm quitting my job." "What do you suddenly say when our daughter is finally grown up?" He said things like, "I want to grow more. I don't want to be just a worker." My husband sometimes behaves in strange ways that surprise everyone around him, and I call them seizures. I watched him for a while, thinking that it was just another of his whims, when he suddenly announced that he was quitting his job, but his desire to change jobs never seemed to subside. Finally, without consulting me at all, he simply said, "I found a new job, so I'm quitting my job. I'll start working at the new company in 2 days." I thought I would stop them if they were trying to do something suspicious again, but when I looked into the company, thankfully, it was a reputable company. But at this new job, Tyler's delusions grew. He started talking about becoming the CEO and demanding respect as a future leader. My daughter and I were simply bemused by his antics. Things only got worse with Tyler's behavior and attitude. "You look older now. All the young girls at work are so pretty." "Huh? You're getting older too. It's natural for everyone." "I know, but you could at least try to be more fashionable. Look at this woman, she's got 2 kids and still looks stunning." He was showing me a photo of a popular Instagram influencer. I was annoyed at being compared to her. I mean, I do keep myself pretty well put together, especially considering I'm 40 and have a child. It was frustrating how he pushed all the housework and parenting onto me while drooling over young, pretty girls. Around this time, Tyler started working late more often and coming home less. "You've been coming home late recently." "Really? It's the usual time, isn't it?" He replied, but his return time was definitely later. Especially on Tuesdays and Fridays, when he wouldn't be home before 10 p.m. "Why are you always late on Tuesdays and Fridays?" When I asked, he suddenly spoke quickly and defensively, "It's for a project. We have meetings only on Tuesdays and Fridays." "Are you doubting me?" He seemed quite unsettled. "Okay, got it," I said, and he looked visibly relieved. But I was suspicious. Ever since we were dating, he always talked fast and got angry when he was lying or feeling guilty. His behavior was predictable. So, I took action. While Tyler was in the shower, I checked his phone. I remembered the password. He once said, "My car license plate number and the password on my old cell phone are all 4649. It was just like him to be that simple. When I entered 4649, the phone unlocked. And there it was, evidence of his affair all over his phone. Messages on text like, "I'm free this Friday, can't wait to see you," and "Is your wife okay with this?" She's clueless, no worries. There were also many photos of him cozy with his coworker. It seemed to be a junior at the company. I transferred all the evidence to my phone, shaking with anger. With all the proof gathered, I finally confronted Tyler about a divorce. Initially, he denied everything, but when faced with the evidence, he turned pale. "I'm sorry. Please don't divorce me." "You wanted a divorce, that's why you cheated and grew cold." "No, it was just a momentary lapse. I don't want to lose you or Hannah. Please." I was filled with hatred for him, but couldn't bring myself to divorce for our daughter's sake, who was 8 at the time. I decided to stay married on the condition that he cease all contact with the woman in the future. It seems that she voluntarily resigned from the company, perhaps because she felt uncomfortable having someone, with whom she had an affair, working at the same company. For 6 months, he seemed genuinely repentant, but a year later, he was back to his old ways, belittling me. I couldn't forgive him for the affair and his continuous disrespect. Our marriage was cold. But we stayed together for our daughter. No matter how many times I broached the subject of divorce, my husband continued to refuse. However, a week ago, Tyler suddenly asked for a divorce. "Let's divorce." "What?" "I've made up my mind. Let's divorce." "Why now?" "You always refused before." "It's not that I didn't want to get divorced," I asked, genuinely curious. I also thought it was best for both of us to divorce. However, he refused to divorce, and he wondered why he had decided to divorce now, even though there had been many times before. "It's your fault. Since my affair, you've changed. You never forgave me, and I'm sick of it." He blamed me. I had indeed never forgiven him. Not just for the affair, but for everything that followed. "It's not just an affair. You've been insulting me all this time. I was doing it for your own good. A woman should take care of the house and maintain her looks.
You were slacking, so I had to remind you. It's not my fault we're divorcing.
That's when I realized he would never admit his faults. He always blamed me, never listening when I said he shared the blame. Finally, he insisted, it's not my fault. So no alimony or splitting assets, remember that. That confirmed it. Tyler wanted to come out on top in the divorce, insisting it was all my fault. There's something wrong with my husband saying things like this. I suspected he might be having another affair. He was so predictable. Getting agitated and talking fast just like before. In the past, I would have confronted him. But now, I have no more interest in him.
Fine, let's divorce. I don't need your assets, but I won't give up living with my daughter. All right, that's fine.
I said, utterly dismayed at how easily Tyler seemed to give up on our daughter despite always claiming she was so important to him. Soon after, we went through the divorce proceedings and finalized it without any trouble. I moved back to my parents' house with my daughter. She wasn't opposed to the divorce and wanted to come with me, saying, Dad's hardly ever home anyway, and he's so mean to you, Mom. I think it's better if we're apart. I just want you to be happy. I was ready to start a new life with my daughter and my parents, but just 3 days after the divorce, an unexpected event occurred. When I came home from work one day, I saw Tyler and a woman with long black hair in front of the house. She was wearing a hat that obscured her face, giving me a bad feeling. I wanted to ignore them, but since they were in front of my family's house, I couldn't just leave them there. Approaching them, Tyler came towards me with a smug smile.
What do you want?
I asked apprehensively.
I'm going to remarry this woman,
he announced triumphantly, his eyes sparkling. Just 3 days after we decided divorce. It was obvious that their relationship overlapped with our marriage. And now he was bragging about it so loudly. What kind of person does that? Has my husband started having strange seizures again? I couldn't help feeling disgusted, thinking this was another one of Tyler's bizarre episodes. I tried to show my disgust openly, but Tyler, absorbed in his story, didn't seem to notice. He went on about his new wife, unasked. As you can see, she's incredibly beautiful, kind, gentle, and her father is a CEO. She comes from a prestigious family. She's the perfect wife. Though I didn't care about Tyler's new partner, I couldn't help but peek at her face. When she slightly lifted her hat, our eyes met. And I recognized her face instantly, freezing for a moment. Seeing me, her face turned pale. I couldn't help but burst into laughter.
Stop it, this is too funny. What are you laughing at? Because I know this woman very well. The easy target you mentioned, Tyler, was actually you.
Tyler naively responded, a target? You two know each other? What a small world. Meanwhile, the woman, trying to leave, said to Tyler,
I'm feeling sick, can we go home now?
Her name is Natalia, and she's trying to leave right now, as if she can't stay here anymore. But Tyler stopped her. Laughing cluelessly, what's wrong, Natalia? I didn't know you knew Eileen. Natalia tried to stop him, saying, stop it. We should go home, but my ex-husband showed no signs of coming home. How did you know each other? He asked us, so I explained. Actually, we had worked together for about 7 years. We had been working together for 7 years. While I was explaining my relationship with Natalia, she seemed quite upset and uncomfortable. However, Tyler doesn't notice her behavior and tells me how perfect she is. She's a 29-year-old beauty, graduated from a prestigious university, kinder and gentler than you, a great cook, and a perfect wife. I'm glad I divorced you. I'm sorry that I'm the only one who is happy, he said sarcastically. Huh?
What a lovely woman.
I tried to empathize with him, but I couldn't stop grinning. When he saw me grinning without crying or feeling regret, he started to get irritated.
Why aren't you more upset? Crying and screaming? Or are you speechless because my new wife is just too perfect?
I see. Tyler must have come to show off his new partner, hoping to see me upset. But honestly, I felt neither envy nor regret. I had no feelings left for my ex-husband, and it didn't matter to me whom he remarried. However, the fact that his new partner was Natalia was just too amusing. Seeing Natalia's face turn pale, I decided it was time to reveal her true identity to Tyler.
I was just surprised by your new partner, Natalia. I guess Natalia was famous at the office for being a beautiful high achiever. It's no wonder you're shocked that such a perfect woman would marry me.
Yes, indeed.
Natalia was quite famous.
Natalia glared at me fiercely, silently begging me not to say more.
Natalia, you said before you quit your job that you were having an affair with a married man, and it turns out that man was Tyler.
What a surprise.
Hey, you can't do it! Don't go around saying you're cheating.
Tyler was momentarily taken aback by this revelation of his pre-divorce affair, but soon shrugged it off. It was about my stupid husband anyway. Seeing Tyler so smitten with Natalia, I decided to share more about her.
Natalia was promoted quickly at work, maybe because she had a special relationship with the company president. Hey, wait a minute!
When was it?
I remember you said loudly during lunch break that all men are just wallets to you. That you could easily hook them by selling your body. What? You were famous for saying that you slept with the bosses for promotions or money. That's a lie! You must be mistaken! Right. But it was a mistake to get involved with the president. His wife found out about the affair, leading to your firing, right? Stop it! Don't make up lies! It's not true! Tyler, she's just jealous because we make such a perfect couple.
Natalia desperately tried to convince Tyler.
Then how about this? Can you still call it a lie?
I said, showing them a photo on my phone. It was a video of a drunken Natalia at a company party.
Men are just wallets. Buy some ready-made food, plate it up, and they think you're a great cook with no taste. Just undress a bit, and they'll pay you. Now I can pay off my debts.
Natalia ranted in the video. It was hard to see her as the gentle and kind person Tyler believed her to be.
So, all the meals you cooked were actually store-bought? And you have debts?
Tyler asked, confused. Yes, Natalia had a lot of debt. Tyler, in a panic, asked her to explain, but she fell silent.
Oh, and Natalia isn't 29 years old. She's 2 years younger than me, so 38.
Natalia had lied about her age. Sure, she looked young thanks to the money she received from men for Botox injections and cosmetic surgeries, but claiming to be 29 was a stretch. Tyler's lack of judgment in women was truly laughable.
And she's not a CEO's daughter. Her dad works in a factory. So that's why you were so adamant about not meeting your family. It's all lies, isn't it, Natalia? Was there even one true thing in what you said?
Tyler's face turned red with anger as he confronted her.
I'm sorry.
Natalia stammered, caught in her web of lies. It's astonishing that Tyler didn't notice any of Natalia's lies, but that's just like him. He judged her solely based on being young and beautiful, never really looking beyond her appearance. That's the kind of person he is. Discovering that his seemingly perfect Natalia was a facade of lies, Tyler was in shock. Apparently, they met about 6 months ago, and Natalia had been bragging to everyone, "I've found an easy mark, even though he's married." They met at a social bar. While I also questioned Tyler's integrity for attending such places despite being married, Natalia targeted him because he boasted, "I work at a major company and earn a good salary." Hearing this, Natalia saw Tyler as an easy target. Despite noticing his wedding ring, she thought his money could help pay off her debts. Eventually, Tyler, wanting to divorce me to remarry Natalia, believed that by divorcing me quickly, he could use his income to support both of them. That's probably why she decided to marry Tyler. He probably thought he could start a new family with the younger Natalia. Tyler, looking at the apologizing Natalia with disdain, yelled, "I can't believe this. There's no way I can continue with all these lies." The irony of his own deceit was lost on him. He was just as guilty of lying as Natalia.
Tyler, you don't even work at that company, do you? And you always bragged about your high salary, but you earn less than me. That was...
Stuttering, Tyler couldn't hide his disarray. Natalia, realizing Tyler's deceit, exploded in anger.
What? I was going to marry you thinking you were rich. What a letdown.
She confronted him angrily and pushed him away.
Huh?
Tyler, stunned by her sudden change, was trembling. He loved Natalia for being young, beautiful, a great cook, and a supposed CEO's daughter, while she loved him for his supposed wealth. All their lies came to light, and their relationship crumbled. Realizing I had once been married to such a despicable man, I felt disgusted with myself but was simultaneously relieved to have divorced him. The two liars were indeed a perfect match. As I told them I'd claimed division of property and tried to enter my house, Tyler naively exclaimed, "We're already divorced, you can't claim my property."
Actually, the process is still ongoing. Maybe you should look it up. If you hadn't come to tell me, I might never have known about the affair.
Hearing this, both of their faces turned red.
I'll discuss further through my lawyer,
I said, finally entering my house. They continued arguing loudly outside, causing a nuisance to the neighbors, and were eventually taken away by the police. Later, with my lawyer's help, we finally finalized our division of property. I was delighted to sever ties with such despicable people. Afterwards, I heard from a colleague that Tyler broke up with Natalia. Now, both Tyler and Natalia are without partners and living in a run-down apartment. As for me, I vowed to find happiness for the sake of my lovely daughter.
I'm going to live here with my eldest son, his wife, and my grandchild.
John declared this loudly, puffing out his chest with confidence. Behind him, Michael and Linda smirked at me maliciously. How can they be so selfish? I felt dizzy, but more than that, I couldn't stand the thought of my happiness being threatened. It must have shown on my face. Michael, as if to deliver the final blow, taunted me.
If you resist, I won't take care of you.
I don't remember raising a child like this, but I regret that it's come to this. Still, I pretended to take the bait and firmly stated, "Then I'll leave." No one there expected that response. They stared at me, faces blank with surprise. Then John, coming to his senses, pointed at me and started yelling.
You're leaving? If you do that, you'll be out on the streets. If you think you're threatening me, think again.
I could tell his words were a bluff by the sweat on his forehead. So I looked straight at John with a bold demeanor. My name is Emma Young, a 53-year-old remote worker. I met John, my husband, when I started working and married him after several years of dating. Shortly after we got married, I got pregnant and had a healthy boy, Michael. Michael is now married and has a child of his own. John used to be very kind, always caring for me. But a few years after our marriage, his attitude began to change. After quitting my job to become a full-time homemaker following childbirth, John's treatment of me grew colder, and I was often treated harshly. I considered divorce several times, but couldn't decide because Michael was still a baby. I thought raising a child needed cooperation, but that ideal was quickly shattered. If Michael cried at night, John would click his tongue, and if I couldn't prepare his breakfast due to lack of sleep, he would yell at me early in the morning. Despite this, I couldn't help but look forward to seeing Michael grow up. When Michael began to understand things, it was a joy to see who he would call first, me or John. I won that small battle. Knowing this, John started to engage more with Michael. For example, he would entertain Michael while I cooked, or he would willingly bathe him. As a result of John's continued indulgence, Michael, contrary to my hopes, began to mimic John's behavior. Once Michael could do things on his own, he became more mischievous. When I scolded him, he would retort with John's words. When Michael didn't clean up his toys after playing, I told him to tidy up, and he snapped back.
Shut up. If you want it cleaned up so badly, ask more nicely.
Then, after I properly scolded him face to face, he would clean up with a disgruntled face, but soon he'd be back to his old ways. I worried he would become a nuisance to others and talked to John about it, but he said, "He's a boy, he needs to be energetic. He'll behave once he's older." Indulging him like this, Michael grew up mischievous. There were countless difficulties, but somehow, I managed to raise him until he graduated from college. It seemed like neither John nor Michael understood my struggles, and I felt burdened with unreasonable feelings as Michael started living alone. Honestly, when Michael left, I felt relieved and returned to living with just John in our house. Until then, Michael's presence had distracted me from John's bad behavior. But now, in the suddenly quiet house, John's negative traits stood out more. His attitude hadn't changed since our marriage years ago, but his unreasonable behavior now took a toll on my mental health. One day, when I was almost fed up, Michael brought a woman home. He said she was his fiancée and they were planning to get married soon. I was overjoyed that Michael, who had been nothing but trouble, was getting married. His fiancée, Linda, appeared strong-willed but was soft-spoken and very polite. She seemed an unlikely match for Michael, but I had no complaints since she chose him. John also approved of their marriage right away. They planned to live in Michael's current apartment after marriage, not with us, but the thought of a lively future made me happy. "I know things are gonna get tough for you guys, so feel free to rely on me." They had both been living alone until now, but they would be living together from now on. I wanted to be a support for them, expecting they might face various challenges. But after they got married, they frequently visited, taking over the living room from morning till night, joining us for shopping only to add unnecessary items to the cart and leave me to pay. I started to feel fed up with Michael and Linda's behavior. Then, when Michael and Linda, who used to frequent our house, suddenly stopped visiting, I received a surprising call. "Hey, listen to this. We're having a baby." Michael sounded ecstatic over the phone. John and I congratulated them on their first grandchild. "Good job, Michael. So, when's the baby due?" "What? Didn't you hear me? The baby's here, that's why I'm calling from the hospital." It turned out Michael was announcing not a pregnancy, but the birth of their child. Shocked, we rushed to the hospital to see our grandchild. After that whirlwind of events, Michael and Linda started visiting often again. It was great seeing my grandchild, but they would leave me with the baby and go out. And to top it off, they'd say, "Emma, the baby's fine with just milk, thanks." "Yeah, lucky to have you, Mom. It's great to have someone to leave the baby with when we go out." They'd laugh as they left me with the baby. Actually, I had started working from home around that time. When Michael brought Linda over, I proposed to John that we leave this house. "What are you talking about? If we do that, where will we live?" John complained immediately, but I quickly countered with a new proposal. "Let's build a new house. Don't worry, I'll also work from home. My parents are getting older, and I'm thinking of living with them. Let's give this house to Michael and Linda, and we can live in a new one." Living together would mean we'd need a house of a certain size and layout, but I convinced him that by combining his income and mine, we could reach our goal. Reluctantly, he agreed, and I began working from home right away. Even when I was tasked with caring for my grandchild or dealing with John's unreasonable outbursts, I never missed a day of work. During these times, the moment finally came to realize my dream. John, albeit reluctantly, agreed to save money for a new house to live with my parents. He wouldn't cooperate unless I pushed him, and I faced more unreasonable behavior. But reaching our goal made all that seem insignificant. "John, we've finally reached our goal. I'm going to see my parents now to discuss moving forward." I had been talking to John about the new house, but now I could have a proper discussion with my parents involved. Leaving a grumbling John behind, I headed to my parents' place. Despite multiple intrusions from Michael and Linda, just the thought of living soon in a new house with my parents brightened my mood. My work was going well, and I was finally able to purchase the house I had always wanted. I reported this to John, looking forward to the day of the handover. Then, on the day of the handover, As I was about to step into the house, excited, a moving truck suddenly stopped by. Stunned, I watched as the movers began unloading. And I hurriedly stopped them. I hadn't heard of such arrangements, and neither our nor my parents' belongings had been moved in yet. Whose belongings were they trying to move in? The confused mover and I were trying to understand the situation, when a loud voice came from somewhere.
"What are you doing, meddling in things?"
The voice belonged to John, and as I turned around, relieved to hear him, I realized the words were directed at me. I realized that those words were directed at me. John gestured dismissively at me as if I were a nuisance, while Michael and Linda were talking to the moving company staff. Then John came over to me and said this.
"We're going to live here with our eldest son, his wife, and our grandchild."
John announced this loudly, chest puffed out with confidence. Michael and Linda stood behind him, smirking at me maliciously. How could they be so selfish? I felt dizzy, but more than that, I couldn't stand the thought of my happiness being threatened. That must have shown on my face. Michael, as if to deliver the final blow, taunted me. "If you resist, I won't take care of you." I don't remember raising a child like this, but I regretted that it had come to this. Still, pretending to take the bait, I firmly stated, "Then I'll leave." No one there expected that response. They just stared at me, faces blank with surprise. Then John, coming to his senses, pointed at me and started yelling.
"You're leaving? If you do that, you'll be out on the streets. If you think you're threatening me, think again."
I could tell his words were a bluff by the sweat on his forehead. So I looked straight at John with a bold demeanor. However, my attitude was in vain, as John smirked, regaining his composure. "That's right, exactly. I'm supposed to be the owner of this house. Wasn't that the agreement?" Indeed, the new house was in John's name. But the purpose of building this new house was to live with my parents, and there were supposed to be other conditions too. Yet, why does John feel so entitled? When I first discussed building a new home with living with my parents in mind, John naturally brought up Michael. Going forward, it's Michael and his family who will live the longest. Wouldn't it then be better to build the new house for Michael and his family? That was a reasonable opinion, but I wanted them to achieve this on their own. So, I persistently persuaded John until he reluctantly agreed. That's why the new house was designed with as many barrier-free features as possible, geared towards my parents. Since marrying John, I hadn't spent much good time. But now that Michael is married, I should be able to live as I please. I've spent so much time on John and Michael, neglecting my parents. Now it's time to give back to them. Lost in these thoughts, I must have been glaring at John and the others. Realizing this, John mocked me. "What's with that defiant look?
Struck a nerve and now you're speechless, huh?"
His words infuriated me. I've put up with so much and resigned myself to his behavior until now. But this time, I couldn't just let it go. Even when John, who was once kind, changed his attitude completely. Even when Michael, imitating John, hurled harsh words at me. Even when John got angry, yelled, threw tantrums, or ignored me on a whim. Even when Linda clearly treated me disrespectfully and dumped childcare on me. I had endured all this patiently. But now, it wasn't just about me, it involved my parents too. And to have it so easily taken over like this was unbearable. Fed up, I couldn't hold back anymore.
Enough is enough. This house was supposed to be for me and my parents, and you, wasn't it? Technically, you're the owner, but strangely, the bank account for the payments is only Michael's. Who prepared everything up to this point, huh?
Yes, the condition for building this house was that it would be in John's name. I understood that. It's better for appearances. But strangely, only Michael was making the loan payments. John claimed he wanted it to look like Michael bought the house. So it seemed like he was doing a good deed for my parents. But I never understood the reason behind this arrangement. However, as long as I could live with my parents, I was okay with any form. So, although it didn't sit well with me, I agreed. Little did I know it would turn out like this. As I stated my case, John, Michael, and Linda all smirked in the same way. That's when I realized it. John had planned from the start to make this house his own. I was like a worker ant, gathering materials and building the nest, only to be manipulated at the last moment. When the house was completed and it was time to move, I realized this and snapped. Then, I presented John with the divorce papers I had kept hidden for years. I had prepared them over a decade ago, when Michael was in high school and away at a sports camp. John and I went out to dine, having the house to ourselves for a change. During the meal, we bumped into one of John's colleagues and had a bit of small talk. When the colleague tried to excuse himself, hurrying the conversation, John said something awful.
"Don't worry about it. Eating out with her is just boring, but I'm the kind husband, playing along. We don't even have a reservation. Maybe I'll send her home and go for a drink. Can't stand looking at her old face."
John's colleague left with a forced smile, clearly uncomfortable. I was shocked by the verbal abuse thrown at me in public. Pretending nothing happened, we continued the meal, but I couldn't even remember its taste. The next day, I went to the office to get a divorce form. When I showed it to John, he was momentarily surprised, but then smirked.
"Nice preparation. You know your stuff. Oh, finally realizing your place, are you? Thought you'd understand sooner, but glad you made it this far. And to think you understand you're disposable, how smart of you."
Exactly.
"You really get it, Mom. Keep working and pay for our house, okay?"
All three of them, John, Michael, and Linda, laughed at me condescendingly, and Michael snatched the divorce form. He handed it to John, who began filling it out, humming a tune. It was clear from his attitude that John didn't remember anything he had done to me, not just from that night but all the years prior. He might even start claiming he did nothing wrong. After filling it out, John waved the form at me, smirking. I snatched it, quickly put it in my bag, and took out my phone. I opened the recording app and held it up in front of them.
"Emma, you're scary. Gathering evidence for divorce now is too late, you know."
Ignoring Linda's mocking laughter, I confirmed with John. "I want no alimony or property division, just don't contact me again." "Sure. If you do, I'll hire a lawyer and demand alimony." Yeah. John responded nonchalantly, laughing throughout. I wondered how someone could be so brazen. Trying to keep my temper in check, I turned to Michael and stated clearly. "And Michael, now that our marital ties are severed, our parent-child relationship is over too." "Ah, okay. They both responded. "Well, that's all I needed. We'll likely never meet again, so take care of yourselves." I stopped the recording and decided to leave. Neither John, Michael, nor Linda seemed to grasp the reality of their future. Without anyone stopping me, I went to the office to file the divorce papers. 3 days after filling out and submitting the rest of the divorce papers at the office, while I was packing up with my parents for the move, John called me. Just the other day, I told him not to contact me again, or I'd hire a lawyer and sue for emotional distress. But he must have had a reason to contact me so desperately. However, now that we're divorced, it's no longer my concern. Busy with packing, I decided to ignore the call. But just as I thought John's call had ended, Michael called me next. Both of them reaching out must mean something serious is going on, but it's none of my business. I ignored both calls and continued working, but the constant ringing was too distracting. Reluctantly, I answered when John called again, and immediately, I heard his pitiful voice.
"Help me, Emma, I can't stop the calls from the bank and Michael."
With that one sentence, I understood what John and Michael were going through and sighed in exasperation. I answered wearily. "I don't know anything about that. It's no longer my concern." John shouted back at me in a voice as loud as he could muster.
"You heartless woman!"
No matter what he said, it was absurd for him to complain to me given their situation. Honestly, I couldn't care less what happens to them. More importantly, do you remember the promise we made just the other day? I deliberately sighed audibly before reiterating, though it was already too late since John had contacted me. What promise? As expected, he seemed to have forgotten. I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. The one where I said I'd hire a lawyer and sue for emotional distress if you contacted me.
I never heard such a thing.
Whether you listened or not, I definitely said it, and you responded.
No, I didn't. I wouldn't easily agree to such nonsensical terms.
John was vehemently denying it, but I had anticipated such a claim. That's why I had recorded the conversation. It's recorded, so you can't escape this.
Please, forgive me. If this continues, both Michael and I will be lost.
John's voice was even weaker than when he first called, pleading with me. But considering everything that's happened, there's no way I could forgive him. Absolutely not, I'm going to consult a lawyer now. I flatly rejected him, but John, who only accepts convenient truths, persisted.
Let's get back together, okay?
I bluntly replied to John's absurd suggestion. In your dreams. I was surprised at how cold my own voice sounded. I then hung up and blocked John's number. That should ensure no further contact from John. Feeling relieved, I was about to resume packing when my phone rang again. Wondering what it was now, I checked and saw Michael's name. I had completely forgotten in the heat of the moment with John, but Michael must also be receiving numerous calls from the bank. He seemed to be reaching out to me for help, just like John. I thought about not answering, but decided to enlighten him about society and answered the call.
Mom, please help me. I keep getting these crazy calls from the bank, and Dad won't answer his phone.
His voice was as pitiful as one could imagine. Having to deal with the same issue twice in one day was too much for me. So, I decided to be brief and sent him the recording before he could say anything more. Your father is that kind of person. Also, I've just sent you a recording of something important, so listen to it and understand. With that said, don't contact me again. You and I are strangers now. After hearing what I said, Michael was yelling something on the other end of the phone, but I hung up without listening. Then, just like I did with John, I blocked his number and went back to my packing. Once I finished a phase of the packing, I headed to the law office. I explained the whole situation and decided to sue John, Michael, and of course, Linda for emotional distress. To be honest, considering there's a child between Michael and Linda, I thought about going easy on them. But thinking back to what happened 3 days ago and everything before that, I just couldn't let it go. I hoped this would be a good opportunity for them to learn about the harsh realities of society. So, I didn't hold back and went through with the full claim. As a result, John was demoted and took a pay cut after this incident became known at his company. Apparently, it became so uncomfortable for him there that he resigned voluntarily. I heard from my lawyer that he's now juggling day jobs to pay the alimony. As for Michael and Linda, their schemes failing led to a huge fight. Linda even brought up divorce. But with a child to consider and unable to afford the alimony on her own, she gave up on the idea. Their home is probably as cold as ever now. I couldn't help but laugh, thinking they didn't have to follow in their father's footsteps so closely. Of course, Michael ended up getting fired due to the commotion. Now both he and Linda are working multiple jobs, sweating it out to pay the alimony. As for me, I went back to my parents' house and told them everything. We discussed what I should do next and decided I'd live with them. Together with my parents, we're now renovating the house to make it comfortable for the three of us. Because of this, we're currently staying somewhere temporarily. Since the divorce, I've been freed from all that mess, and thankfully, my work has been recognized, leading to an increase in my income. From now on, I'm going to work even harder and live a happy life. Being with my parents is now the greatest joy of my life.
She's a poor high school dropout from a single-parent home, but she can be useful as a slave.
At a dining table laden with delicious side dishes and fresh fish carpaccio, in front of his parents, Leon said with a laugh. I felt my ears burn with embarrassment at such a terrible introduction. There had been moments in our cohabitation when I questioned Leon's attitude. But I had overlooked them, thinking we might become husband and wife. But to be insulted like this in front of his parents was beyond belief. Before I could worry about what his parents thought, they suddenly burst into laughter. "What's this, some kind of prank? I didn't know you could joke like that," they said, looking at Leon casually. "What?" Confused, Leon stared back at his parents. I swallowed hard, witnessing this interaction. "My name is Julie Brown. And I'm 33 this year. I've hopped between various jobs, but currently, I'm working part-time at a restaurant. I wanted to work full-time, but since my mother, a single parent, fell ill a year ago, I've had to balance work with her care. Since I care for her after returning from work, these days are quite exhausting physically. But I'm determined to help the mother who raised me. Despite her insistence on going to a facility, I want to spend as much time as possible. Knowing how I feel, she thanks me every day with a smile. Both my restaurant job and caring for my mother are my passions. If I can be useful to someone, I'll gladly take on any challenge. My mother always taught me, be useful to others, and it will come back to you. This philosophy has ingrained in me, and I've dedicated myself to every job. Before I knew it, I was over 30 and starting to think about marriage. I wasn't initially desperate to get married, but recently my mom kept saying, "I'm worried about you when I'm gone." I wanted to find someone nice soon to reassure her. The first thing that came to my mind was a dating app. It seemed popular lately, frequently mentioned in the news. Meeting someone through an app and getting married seems quite normal these days. I was nervous about signing up at first, but it turned out to be quite fun. I was surprised by the sheer number of messages I received daily. However, many seemed to be just for fun, and Leon was probably the first one who seemed seriously into marriage. "I'm Leon Miller. Nice to meet you." I first met Leon face-to-face through the app at a certain cafe in New York City. Coincidentally, we lived in the same neighborhood, and he agreed to my suggestion to meet there. When I first met Leon, he struck me as a fine young man with handsome features. He was a year older than me, very friendly and likable. He's a lawyer. A catch by any standard. I wondered why such an eligible bachelor hadn't married yet. "Excuse me, but have you ever considered marriage?" "Yes, but work always took precedence. This time I'm serious about finding a partner, someone sincere like you, Julie." Leon seemed skilled at flattering women. We hit it off talking about his career and our past relationships. Leon definitely seemed to be popular with women. Unlike me with few romantic experiences, Leon seemed to have been popular since his student days. "There's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" I wanted to share my insecurities with someone I might date. I'm actually a high school dropout and currently working part-time in a restaurant due to caring for my mother. I've done various jobs, but if you're okay with someone like me, I'd be happy to keep talking like this. I had never told anyone about my educational background on a first meeting before. But I thought Leon would listen without mocking me. Leon nodded seriously upon hearing her confession. "Is that so? You must have faced tough times. But now you're doing admirable work. There's nothing to worry about." Leon's words made me so happy that I was almost in tears. I felt immensely relieved and valued, realizing that Leon didn't mind my social status or education. Since that day, we met several times, and after 3 months, I took the initiative to confess my feelings to Leon. It was my first time and I was quite nervous. But Leon, to me, seemed like the ideal man. Not because of his profession as a lawyer, but his sincere demeanor in conversations. Seeing his serious expression when talking to me and realizing he treated me as an equal always made me happy. I expressed my feelings to Leon, and when he said, "I love you too, Julie," I felt an immense joy. Furthermore, Leon was already thinking about marrying me, so we decided to date with marriage in mind. The future, spending time with Leon, who was now not just a boyfriend but a fiancé, seemed exciting. I now understood why my friends were always so eager to talk about their boyfriends, even when nobody asked. The joy of being with someone you love is irreplaceable. But at that time, I didn't know that. My relationship with Leon would take an unexpected turn. All right, I'm counting on you for cleaning, laundry, cooking, and taking out the trash. I'm busy working all day, you know. When Leon and I started dating, we decided to move in together quickly, considering our age. We chose an appropriate apartment in New York and agreed to split the rent. Honestly, I wished Leon, who earned much more than me, would contribute a bit more, but I felt it was hard to complain due to my situation. On the first day of us moving in together, I was stunned by his words. Cleaning, laundry, cooking, and taking out the trash. Does that mean I have to do all the housework? I need to take care of my mom at night. Of course, it's obvious. I'm an elite lawyer, and you're just a high school dropout doing part-time work, right? I'm busier and earn more, so it's only natural for you to handle the household. I was struck by a dull shock. To think that Leon, who had once praised me for being admirable despite being a high school dropout, was now belittling me and dumping all the housework on me. His attitude was 180 degrees different from when he had praised me during my confession. My mind was in turmoil. What's going on? Is this the real Leon? Is this some kind of prank? A whirlwind of doubts swirled in my mind, but if it were a joke or prank, it would be in extremely poor taste. That meant Leon's words were serious. No way, could it be? Was Leon this kind of person all along? Pretending to be solid and reliable to lure women in, only to cast them aside once he's got them. I've often heard that many men stop caring once they've caught the fish, but with Leon, it's beyond that. It's like throwing the fish on the ground and abandoning it. All right, I'm off to work. Please take care of what I said earlier. Leon left for work without even considering my point of view. I felt like I was plummeting from the pinnacle of happiness into the depths of despair, engulfed by a dark cloud of anxiety. Living with Leon wasn't just about being burdened with all the housework. He often went out for meals after work, claiming it was for business. And many times his company was other women. I knew this because he brazenly told me, "I'm going out for drinks with a girl tonight." His attitude seemed defiant, as if he had nothing to hide, but I wish he'd consider how it felt to be on the receiving end. Even if Leon loved me, treating me like a slave since moving in together made me doubt his feelings. Often, Leon wouldn't return until late at night after going out. Usually, I get home in the evening, drop my things off, and then head straight to my parents' house. Fortunately, it's just 2 stations away, but juggling a part-time job, all the housework, and caring for my parent, I was exhausted every day. Leon would occasionally leave for meals without a word, leaving the dinner I made to go to waste. And when he returned drunk, looking at the dinner I had prepared, he said, "What a waste of food! Why did you make this stuff? I thought you were coming home today." Huh? I haven't been coming home for days. Can't you figure that out? Do I have to spell everything out for you? This is what I expect from someone who only finished high school. Despite Leon's lack of communication, he berated me for being a middle school dropout. His words filled me with anger. The reason Leon had never been married must be because he's been deceiving women like this. That's who Leon really is. I was the one who got fooled. But I refuse to be his puppet any longer. How can I get back at Leon? 2 months into living with Leon, I was cleaning his room when I happened to notice his laptop screen open. The messaging app was left open, and a particular message caught my eye. It seemed Leon hadn't read it yet, but there were a lot of notifications. With trepidation, I opened the chat screen. "What's this?" I was shocked by the content of the conversation. Delving deeper into his messages, the more I discovered about Leon, the more I felt a chill run down my spine. I've stumbled upon something big. Alone in the room, trembling with shock and fear, I was glued to Leon's chat screen, taking pictures of it with my smartphone. The next day, Leon invited me to visit his parents' home. I wasn't in the mood, especially after what I had seen, but he had already told his parents we were coming. Feeling it would be rude to cancel now, I decided to go, thinking I would just say hello and then leave. I thought I was dating Leon as my fiancé, but my feelings were complicated. Wondering how to convey my current feelings to Leon and his parents, I headed to Leon's family home.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Julie Brown. Leon always takes good care of me.
As soon as I arrived at Leon's house, I greeted. When I saw the faces of Leon's parents, I was utterly surprised. Because their faces looked familiar. Julie Brown. Could it be? Leon's parents seemed about to say something, but Leon quickly exclaimed, "I'm starving," so we all sat down at the dining table for now.
Hey, what are you doing? This isn't the time to be sitting. Hurry up and serve the meal.
What? Leon glared at me as I sat down at the table. His parents were shocked. So was I. Coming to someone else's house and being told to prepare a meal, I didn't know what to do. Of course, if that had been the plan from the start, I would have been prepared, but being suddenly ordered by Leon, I was flustered.
It's okay, we've ordered delivery.
Leon's father kindly said, but Leon snorted.
We shouldn't have bothered ordering this stuff. We could have just had her do it.
At Leon's words, his parents seemed astonished. Eventually, the doorbell rang, and the delivery person brought some delicious food. It turns out it was ordered from well-known department store. As Leon's parents laid out the tasty dishes on the table, they said, "Let's eat." Leon then began to introduce me again.
She's a poor high school dropout from a single-parent home, but she can be useful as a slave.
At a dining table laden with delicious side dishes and fresh fish carpaccio, in front of his parents, Leon said with a laugh. I felt my ears burn with embarrassment at such a terrible introduction. There had been moments when I questioned Leon's attitude. But I had overlooked them, thinking we might become husband and wife. But to be insulted like this in front of his parents was beyond belief. Before I could worry about what his parents thought, they suddenly burst into laughter. "What's this, some kind of prank? I didn't know you could joke like that," they said, looking at Leon casually. "What?" Confused, Leon stared back at his parents. I swallowed hard, witnessing this interaction. You enjoy saying things like that, watching how we react, don't you? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Eyes funny. You knew we knew Julie from before, and you set up this weird prank, right? What? Leon looked completely baffled. He clearly had no idea what his parents were talking about. Leon's parents seemed to realize that Leon's belittling words towards me were not a prank but his true feelings, and their expressions turned stern instantly. You really don't know? You spoke about Julie as if she were a slave, not knowing the truth?
What do you mean, I don't know? I always speak the truth, don't I?
Needless to say, those words were the last straw. Leon's parents' faces grew even more severe, and they both glared at him. Julie's mother helped us a lot, you know. Back in Japan. Wait, in Japan, with Julie's mom. Leon looked at me, as if asking what was going on. It made sense he didn't know, as I had barely spoken about my past to him. I decided to tell everything about why I knew Leon's parents. You see, I moved to Japan during my high school days. I wanted to explore my potential and work abroad. Of course, my mother opposed it. She said it'd be better after college. But I knew our family was poor and that we couldn't afford my college education, so I went against my mom's wishes and moved to Japan. Leon's eyes widened in surprise as I suddenly talked about living in Japan during high school. My mom eventually agreed and came with me. I studied Japanese hard before moving, but it was still tough in Japan. However, Japan is more tolerant about educational backgrounds, and I managed to find a job. As I hopped between various jobs, I gradually became conversational in Japanese. My mom also learned Japanese on her own, and we lived comfortably.
In Japan, working? There's no way you, a high school dropout, could.
But I did. I even started an IT company with some local friends and caught a big break. About 10 years after moving, I had built up a decent amount of wealth. Enough to buy a brand new house with cash. And 3 years ago, I met your parents. Leon's parents nodded deeply at my words. Leon exclaimed in disbelief, "What?" Leon, you might remember, but your mother and I lived in Japan for a year due to work 3 years ago while you stayed home. We barely spoke Japanese and were struggling until Julie and her mom helped us out. That's right. My mother and I used to host events for American people in Japan on our days off. It was Leon's parents who we met there. They had just arrived in Japan and told us about it, and we often met to teach them Japanese and about life in Japan. Leon's parents were very happy to learn about Japan from my mother and me. We have great memories of having tea and going sightseeing together. So, I was shocked to unexpectedly reunite with them today. They had mentioned having a son, but never gave details. It might seem too coincidental, but such things happen, and now I've come to accept this reality. Mom and Dad knew Julie. No way. You wouldn't think so, right? But it's true, so what can you do? That's why we knew from the start Julie was a wonderful person, and I can't believe how you spoke ill of her. Leon's mom glared at him angrily. Like a frog being stared down by a snake, making Leon let out a squeak of fear. A year ago, my mother's health declined, and we returned home, but I'm still remotely working for the IT company. The staff there trust me a lot. At the restaurant where I work part-time, they value me for speaking Japanese. I'm a high school dropout, but I've always tried hard in everything I could do. Leon's face turned pale. He had always ridiculed me for being a high school dropout, but now he was shocked to learn that I was successful. Why didn't you tell me something so important? You're rich, huh? Then let's get married after all. I won't make fun of you anymore, okay? Leon said with a bright voice, suddenly being upfront. He had changed his mind after knowing about my substantial assets. But I'm not fooled by Leon's superficial words. What are you talking about? I have no intention of marrying you. Do you know how hard it was for me when you deceived me and then showed your true colors after we started living together? And speaking of deception, you've committed fraud using your position as a lawyer, haven't you? Fraud? What are you talking about? Leon's demeanor changed drastically when he realized I had no intention of marrying him. He was visibly shaken at the mention of fraud. I pressed on. I accidentally saw it on your computer yesterday. There were numerous complaints addressed to you. I'm sorry I looked without permission, but the angry words from your clients who were charged fraudulent fees by you were very justified. I have proof. I showed Leon the photos I had taken of his computer screen the day before. Leon's face contorted, and his parents' faces grew even more stern. You claim to be an elite, yet you deceived people and committed fraud. That's just the lowest. You probably ran through your money with your nightlife and are now drowning in debt, right? The moment you found out I have assets, you tried to take my money too. Truly despicable. Your parents are such respectable people, it's a shame. Please consider our engagement null and void. I glared at Leon, delivering these final words. Leon was crestfallen, muttering, "No way." Leon's parents seemed to agree with my decision, angrily shouting at Leon, "You need to go to the police right now." Go to the police? No way. What are you saying? You deceived important clients, hurt Julie, and think you can be happy alone? What a foolish son you are. We don't need a son like you anymore. Go to the police right now. Leon's father's roar echoed through the house. Stunned, Leon then let out a scream as if he had forgotten his voice and rushed out of the house. I'm so sorry for our foolish son. What can we do to apologize? Leon's mother said, holding my hands in remorse. No, please, don't apologize. It's also my fault for being deluded while in a feverish state. But thanks to meeting Leon, I'm really happy to see you two again. Thank you. Leon's parents looked down. We then reminisced about our time in Japan, and they expressed concern for my mother's health. They truly are good people. I may have lost a fiancé, but in return, I've gained a wonderful connection, which is a small consolation. Leon, as promised, turned himself in to the police and is currently being questioned. I suspect he was spending money on a woman. He would declare I'm going out for drinks with a lady without any guilt and leave at night. Leon, running out of money, deceived clients with exorbitant fees, trying to escape his debts. Then, he even targeted my assets. He's hopeless. Even if he comes out of police custody, the incident is already known around, and he will likely lose his job. According to his parents, Leon was always getting into fights with friends and was often called out by teachers in elementary and middle school. He even had police trouble due to these fights. It's a mystery how such parents could have a son like Leon, but he's only reaping what he sowed. Leon's parents have decided not to let him back into their home. I also believe that Leon should not be a burden to his parents. He has lost his job and fiancé, and must be in the depths of despair now, but there's no room for sympathy. He should at least pay off his debts on his own. Meanwhile, I continue to stay in touch with Leon's parents. They are planning to visit my family home soon. They want to meet my mother. Though I lost my fiancé, I am happy to have formed such a precious bond. Life, with both work and caregiving, has its challenges, but I want to cherish those who care for me and continue to live positively.